All right, so we're going to take a look at X2 matching exponential functions and graphs. So we're talking about transformations. You just need to remember the rules. So remember the original question or exponential function looks like it has an isotope right here and it goes like this, okay? So you have to know what happened to the graph that originally started like this and how it ended up here now. So it looks like it stayed the same. The only thing that happened is it moved what? Up. And what did it move up to? So it had an isotope right here and it moved up to 1, 2, 3. So it moved up 2, 3. So it's either this one or this one. Well, if you look at this first question right here, this has a negative. And what do you know about a negative? It's going to flip it. And because it's outside, it flips it over the x. So this, if this was this, it would have been flipped upside down like this. It would have been on the bottom over here. So it's not that, so it has to be this. Okay. All right, so which graph models this equation? So once again, what is going on to the original graph? So is it, first of all, we can start by doing some elimination. You can see these are flipped graphs, right? So at some point they got flipped like this. Is there a negative? No, so it's not these. So it could be one of these, okay? Now look inside here. What do you know about B being 1/3? What does that mean? Is it growing or is it decaying? It is decaying, right? This one is growing, right? This one is decaying because it's going down, so that one. All right, which graph matches this transformation? First of all, I always start with the outside. This goes down 2. So I already know the isotope should be at -2. So isotope at -2 on all of them. Okay, so that doesn't help me. All right, the other thing is I can see these two are flipped. Okay, so a flipped ones meaning that I am looking for a negative out here. Do I say negative out here? Nope, so it's not these two. So I'm looking at this. So now when it comes down to this, is it growing? Is from left to right, is it going up? Or from left to right, is it going down? So you look at your B. So where do you find my B? Right next to the X, it's 4. Is this growth or is this decay? It's growing, so that means it should be that one. All right, which equation matches this graph? All right, so once again, I already know that it's done what? It's upside down, so it's been flipped over like this, right? So it should have a negative outside. Also, I can see the isotope has moved up to 6, so which means I should have +6 on the end. So it's one of these two, and I know that it should have been flipped, right? So the only one with a negative is this one. All right, once again, your isotope is at -5, more -5, they're all on -5, so that doesn't help me. I can see that it's flipped, right? So it isn't anything on the top, these are on the top of the isotope, so it's one of these. Now I need to know which one of these it is. So how did it get flipped? Is this negative inside or outside? It is outside. So outside is a flip over over the X, right? So okay, it looks like they both got flipped over the X. The question is, what did the original one look like? Okay, so the original one, if I was to draw it, looked like this, right? Like that. So if I flip that, will it look like this or will it look like this? It will obviously look like that. So that will be your answer. All right, which equation makes this graph? First of all, it has -6 at the end. They all have -6 at the end. Oh, man. All right, next, it is above the isotope, so no negative outside. So not that, one of these two. Then the question is it growing or is it decaying? It is growing. From left to right, it's going up. From here to here, it's going up. So growth, is it a fraction or integer? It is an integer for growth. All right, which equation matches this graph? So once again, my isotope is 4, so I should have +4. So one of these two. Is it decaying or is it growing? Okay, so looking at the B attached to the X, this is a fraction, so it's decaying. This one is integer, so it is growing. So from left to right, what's going on? It's going down, so that's decay, so it should be a fraction inside. All right, once again, you're matching. So again, -6 is my isotope, -6, not that one. So one of these two is my isotope. Then I have a negative outside, which means it flipped it, correct? So, and there's no negative inside. So just make sure you're looking at both, okay? So originally it looks like this. So if I flip it over the X, it should look like this. Okay, so that's not the one. It looks like this one. So you just kind of have to think through them. All right, what's your isotope? 5, 5, 5, 5, the whole 5. Okay, now, what did your original graph look like? Because there's no flips of any kind. Like there's no negative in here or out here, right? So my original graph looks like this. If all I did was move it up 5 and made it like bigger, it would look just like that, just different. So the only one it could be is this one, because this looks like just the original but moved up 5. All right, which equation matches? Again, I'm looking for positive 5 at the end, so one of these two. And then it's flipped over, okay? But you have to think, okay, in terms of, I'll do two things here, okay? And this question is very, very important. This is the one I expect you guys to be getting wrong, okay? So I'm gonna take my time on this explanation. All right, you see this one is decay, this one is growing, right? And then it's both of them are flipped, so it should be upside down. So remember, the original graph looks like this, right? And then you flip it. When you flip it, it looks like that. So it looks like it was growing and then we flipped it. So it should be growing 3 and then flip, okay? So this is not this one, because if it was this one, it would have been decaying. It would have been going like this. And if we flip that, it would be going like this, okay? So that's different from this one. So I wanna say this one again, because this is the one that you're gonna get the most wrong. All right, it starts at +5 on both. They both have flipped, so we know the graph is flipped, right? The original function starts off like this, okay, like this. So if we flip this one, the original that starts like this, it will look like this, okay, which means originally it was growing. So right now it looks like, you can't say it's decay or growth when it's underneath. You have to look at it before you flip it. Does that make sense? So make sure that when you're looking at the numbers in here, it's whether you're growing or decaying, it's before you flip it. So then that means that it was growing initially, because if it was like this and you flip it, it's now like this. So negative outside because it's flipped, and it was growing initially. So be careful with that question. All right, which equation? So I'm looking for +5 at the end. These two right here, +5. One looks like it's flipped, the other one is not. So is this flipped? Nope, because flipped over the x, and that's what all these questions look like. It's not flipped over the x, so that one's not flipped over the x, so it's this one. And then it should be decaying, so decaying means from left to right it's going down. All right, -4 is isotope, so not that one, one of these two right here. It is flipped. They look like they're both flipped. So what I need to look at, again, this is the question that you would be getting wrong. What I need to look at is before the flip, was it growing or decaying? So if I flip this back, it looks like it was doing this, right? If I flip it back up here, it was doing this. If I flip this one back up here, it's doing this. Okay, so if I, again, flip this one, it's doing this. And what is this? From left to right, what's that? Decay, right? If I flip this one, if I flip it over, it's doing this. And what's that? From left to right, growth. So initially, this one was decay before I flip it. So where you got to look at growth and decay before you flip, that's how you know which one it is. So this one was decay. All right, which one matches this graph? So my isotope is at 1, so +1, one of these two. Is it flipped? Because that's the only difference between these two. Is it below the isotope? Yes, it is, so that's that one. All right, -1 is my isotope. Nope, nope, yes, yes. So one of these two. Is it flipped? Is there negative out here? No. So it's not flipped over, so it must be this one. All right, +4 is my isotope. Yes, yes, no, no. So one of these two. Is it flipped? It is not flipped. There's no negative out here, so it's not flipped. So it's not this one. It's got to be this one, and that makes sense because it's decaying. All right, which one matches? So I need an isotope at 1, +1. So not that, not that. So I'm looking at these two. Is it flipped? Because this one is flipped, this one is not. Is it below the isotope? No, it is not below the isotope, so it's got to be this one. And does it make sense that its fraction is decay? Is it going from left to right? Is going down? Yes, it is. All right, isotope at -4, -4, -4, -4, -4. Okay, so they're all at -4. Is it flipped? Should it be below the isotope? Is there a negative out here, meaning it flipped over the x-axis? No. So it's not this, not this. It's one of these two. And then from left to right, this is decay. From left to right, this is growth. So in here, fraction, is that growth or decay? Decay, so that should be that one. Isotope at +1, +1, one of these two, okay? It's not flipped, no negatives on either one, so the only difference is it growth or decay? So if from left to right, it's going up. So what's that? That is growth. So growth is an integer, not a fraction. All right, isotope at -5, they're all -5. Is it flipped? Is it flipped over the x-axis? Nope, so it shouldn't have a negative on the outside, so not that, not that. So either this one or this one. And then is it growing or decaying? So from left to right, it is going down, so it's decaying. So it should be a fraction inside, which is that one. And that's pretty much it. I guess I can go all the way to 100. All right, so +6 is my, they all look like they're all 6. It's flipped. So, oh, this is that question that you usually will get wrong. So again, third time, let me go over it. This is the one to look for. You have to look at growth decay before the flip. Okay, so looking at my flip graphs, these two right here, I'm gonna flip it back. So flip this back here, it's gonna do this. It's going to be decaying, so that might be what I'm looking for. If I flip this one, it's going to be growing. So this one is the one I'm looking for because when I flip it back, it is still decay. All right, which equation makes the graph? So -6 is, oh, look, this one's easy because I'm just looking at isotope is at -6. Because really what it is, you start off the isotope at 0 and then you move it down 6, so boom. All right, -4, it's one of these two. It's flipped, they're both flipped, and then it's growing. So remember to look at growth and decay before the flip. So put this back, flip this back. If I flip this over the line, it's doing this, so it's growing. If I flip this over the line, it's doing this, so it's decaying. And this is not a fraction, so I need growth. So that's that. -4, boom, boom, these two, okay? Is it, there's no negative, so they're not flipped, okay? So then it's either growing or decaying. This 2 is gonna be growth. So this one from left to right is going down, so that's decay. This one from left to right is going up, so that is growth. All right, isotope is at 2, +2, +2. So one of these two, one is flipped, one is not, right? Because the negative outside has flipped it. This is a flipped graph, so it has to be that one. All right, which one matches the graph? 2, so +2, one of these two. It is flipped, so the only thing that's flipped is that one. And you just get faster the more you do it. -1, so this one or this one of these two. It is flipped, so it should be underneath the isotope. That's not flipped, this one is flipped. -2, so one of these two right here. And then it's not flipped, there's no negative, and it's decaying. So it's not flipped right here, and it's decaying from left to right. Last question. The isotope is at 4, so +4, ooh, so that's the only one it could be. I'll just go over the whole thing just to make sure you're okay, because it's the last question. It is flipped over the x-axis, that's negative, flips over the x-axis, because originally it's like this, so it's flipped over the x, and then is it growth or decay? You just have to look at it before the flip, so if I flip it back, we'll be doing this, which is from left to right growth. So that's the answer, and boom, impressive.